If I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of The School Without Walls. This is part 2 of our Black History preparation for the month of February, although today is January the 14th, 2015. I have with me again, part 2, Mr. Edlun Marshall, a graduating senior here at the University of Arkansas. I've enjoyed having you with me. Glad you had time to stay with us. Now, what we are doing here today is trying to set up a curriculum to show those who are concerned, black or white, how to properly teach the history of anybody, but in this case, we're talking about African Americans. You don't start with last couple of decades to teach history. You go back to the beginning and come this way. And we have been in Egypt, which was a part of Africa. By the way, Egypt was not named Egypt by the natives, indigenous people of Africa. They used to call it the land of Ham. See, the Ham settled it, all right? And then later the Greeks named it Africa. And like most things go, once you lose a certain knowledge of self, you will take on whatever the enemy gives you.
That's true.
Like in our society, my daddy called himself a Negro, a colored, because the people that had power over him called us either Negro or colored.
Learned behavior.
Learned behavior. My generation was the beginning of the thinkers, so we said, now, this is the way it started. My generation said, now, European Americans call themselves white. We're the opposite of that, and according to English, the opposite of white is black.
True.
So we need to call ourselves black, and also we have been ridiculed and put down with black, so that's a way to offset that too.
Right.
I said I'm black and I'm proud.
Right.
Of course, James Brown took it on, made it real popular.
So in other words, black have a negative connotation.
It was designed that way by the system, to make it negative. And I can remember when I was a child, if you were dark, somebody get angry, oh, black fool, and that dark-skinned person gets so mad he want to break your neck. But now we learn better, right?
That's
because of education. So we did that, and we learned first that Negro meant black. See, we call Negro, my parents didn't know Negro meant black. I'm not black, I'm Negro. That's like, I'm not black, I'm black.
Right.
But it said, I'm not black, I'm ignorant of what black is. But our generation went to school a little bit, and we said, Negro means black. This comes from Latin, and so let's just face it and deal with it. And then it moved from there to, we later discovered there's no nation called black. Because the whites call themselves white, but they knew they were Frenchmen, Germans, Italian, so they could move from white to being Italian right away. You see?
Right.
So we decided, listen, we got to find a location here. So we've learned that African is the origin of the darker people of the world. So since we don't know which nation we come from, we just say at least we are Africans. And that's how we got to that. Now let's go to, we're talking about Egypt, the Christian Coptic, C-O-P-T-I-C, Coptic Orthodox Church of Egypt. This is very significant for anybody, but especially for Christians. Before there was a Catholic church, there was a Coptic church. Okay? See, the Coptic church was organized by St. Mark, who was one of the 12 disciples of Christ, about 12 years after his ascension. St. Mark went into Egypt, North Africa, and started talking about Jesus the Christ and established a religion. Now, it's important for us to be conscious that a religion is a system by which you have a body of rules that govern you according to how you represent your deity. Where spirituality is recognized there is a deity, and you just worship according to your feeling. But he set up order, structure. And in Egypt, it's called the Coptic religion. And now, I'm going to talk more about it in a minute, but since time is so essential and is fleeing, we need to if once we understand that, then we know that the Catholic Church did not exist until about 300 AD. Okay?
Okay.
Remember, the Coptic Church started 12 years AD. And so if we understand that, then we can better understand why when the founder of Christianity, who was the Emperor of Rome, Constantine, decided that his people in Europe needed an organization, he went to Africa to get scholars to help set it up because they had a lot of experience. You see, but we don't understand that. We might say, why would he go to Africa? He went to Africa because they had 200 some years of experience already, right?
Okay.
So it says the word Coptic is derived from a Greek word spelled Aigykpots, and out of that word later comes Egyptians too, which was in turn derived from Hikapath, one of the names of Memphis, the first capital of ancient Egypt. Were you aware that the first capital of ancient Egypt was named Memphis, like the Memphis in Tennessee?
Indeed.
And it's named after that.
It is.
And that's why they have the pyramids in Memphis, Tennessee. You realize that?
Okay, I've never made that connection
that's
with the
the
pyramid
connection.
being in Memphis.
Yeah, they got the pyramids in Memphis, and the name Memphis comes out of Africa. And it so happened that I've been blessed to visit Memphis in Africa. I've visited it. And once you visit a place, you can learn a lot more than just reading about it.
You can.
You've heard of, we have one more minute in this segment, you've heard of this very famous pharaoh, I can't think of it right now, Ramses. Do you remember that, his Ramses? Ramses' statue was being renovated when I was there. It was a big old statue lying out, and I'll tell you about that after break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
You make me wear my bike helmet. You taught me never to run with scissors. And to follow the swimming rules.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
Those of you who just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. My guest is Mr. Edlun Marshall, a graduating senior here at the University of Arkansas. We're making preparations for Black History Month, which is February, and we're dealing with a curriculum that I've designed that would be fitting if you're trying to train your people the history of the Africans. You would start with Africa rather than America. And I was talking about, what was the statue was Ramses. Ramses. A quick story about Ramses. I was many years ago. I visited this part of the world, and they were putting his statue together. It had fallen. You know, they put it all together. And about 20 years later, they brought it to Memphis, Tennessee, and put it on exhibit. And I so happened to have been at some meeting here at the university, and two sophisticated black women were talking about Pharaoh Ramses. They were using all those airs and talking, which is fine. They talking, and I said, and I happened to been in the company. I'd say, yeah, I saw that statue a few years back. She said, no, that's impossible because they only brought it to Memphis last year. I said, ma'am, I saw it in Egypt before they even put it together. Oh, you did? You see, so we have to be careful about those little things.
We do.
So shocked her. Yeah, I saw it in Egypt before they put it together. But they did do a tour of America with that statue teaching back in the day. Well, anyway, we're talking about the Coptic religion, right? All right, the modern use of the term Coptic describes Egyptian Christians. You hear them talk about Christians in Egypt on the television, no doubt, but you never heard them say Coptic, have you? They don't want you to know that.
No.
They don't want you to know that, who they are. They're different than we are as Christians.
That's true. Religion is one of the most touchiest topics there is in America.
That's true. Talking about religion.
A lot of people seem to believe that Africans knew absolutely nothing about Christians until the Europeans come along.
Right.
So therefore they called it the white man's religion.
That is correct.
How ignorant and barbaric we was, just going about everyday life without even knowing of a God. So,
And that was not true, was it?
Was not
That was
true.
false stuff, yeah, right.
False stuff.
Because you check your history, the idea of one God came out of Africa. The idea of one God came out of Africa, you see.
Okay.
Before that was an Abraham. Yeah. It was a particular Pharaoh. They call him King Tut. He has a long name. William probably pronounced Tukum. Can you pronounce that name? Yeah. He was the guy who brought it to brought it to his people and then went to West. But they don't want you to know that. And as you said, they would say that's proving the need to enslave these barbaric people. And another thing that we will touch on quickly is most of the Africans who were brought here as slaves came from West Africa, and they were Muslims. Most of us don't know that. They were Muslims, which believed in one God. But when you come to Christianity, we just from what I've said, the Coptic people, 12 years after Christ, were teaching the religion in North Africa and spread it throughout many places of Africa. That was right after Christ. And of course, Islam came on later into the West Africa, but Christianity was before Islam in Africa.
Right.
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about what I have here noted. It says the modern use of the term Coptic describe Egyptian Christians as well as the last, this is very important, make a note of this, the last stage of the ancient Egyptian script or writing. Coptic is the original language of our people of Egypt. Coptic.
Wow.
Coptic, so don't forget that. I've often tried to find it out. I hadn't found it out before I did this research. I said, what language did the original Egyptians speak? I never could find it, but it's Coptic, okay? Now, it's also, it describes the distinctive art and architecture that developed as an early expression of the new faith, Coptic, okay? The Coptic Church is based on the teaching of St. Mark, who brought Christianity to Egypt during the reign of the Roman Emperor Nero in the 1st century, a dozen of years after the Lord's ascension. I'm just reading what I've said. He was one of the 4 evangelists and one who wrote the oldest of the 4 Gospels. Mark Gospel was the first one. I believe that we're about to end the second segment here. Anything you want to say? Anything in your mind? We have 2 more minutes in the second part, right? About the Coptics. That was news for you, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, the Coptics. Don't forget, COPTIC is the oldest organized Christianity in the world, and it started in North Africa, and to this day, it's worshipped in North Africa. And one of the major difference in this, in the religion that was started by Catholics, the first Christian religion in Europe was Catholic. Catholics started theirs mainly as a political unit, and they took in more of the secular world, whereas the Coptic people do not believe that they should participate in the world. They are in the world, but not of the world. Therefore, they don't have any problem with governments. If one country takes over, it doesn't bother them because they're not siding with any of them.
Right.
They're trying to do what they had learned that Christ would have them to do. They generally get along with any government.
Right.
Because they were taught to that which is Caesar's, give that unto Caesar, and that which is God, give that unto God. Christ taught that. So they live basically closer to the truth than the Christian that we are part of.
Right. Now, riddle me this, Dr. Hobbs. Why do you think that all of this information isn't taught in classrooms and that all of our important culture is so suppressed?
It's a good question. I would think it's because The early oppressors and capitalists knew that if this truth existed, they couldn't take advantage of the two races, major races, black and white.
But what made Caucasians think that they were so superior that they had to demean us in every possible way so we wouldn't succeed?
That's a question we're going to have to look into. That's a good question, though.
All right.
We going to have to stop this second segment.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To
not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hart, what's going on?
I'm leaving.
Why? What did I do?
Not enough. You constantly ignore me. You barely eat anything healthy. You're half as active as you used to be. The pressure is just too much. I quit.
Okay, I get it. I'll do better. Just please, don't leave.
Okay. But remember, if I go, you go.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you. Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Okay, so let's move on here. Like you said, the question you raised is another show. We can do some research on that. But right now, we're going to talk about not only were blacks or Africans in the nation of Africa, what they later called Africa, there were black Greeks. Yeah, that they didn't tell us that either. They talked about the Greek civilization, but what we need to have a picture of the world over there. We have the Mediterranean Sea, like this table here is the Mediterranean Sea. Right here is what we call Lebanon. You've heard of that today, right? Israel right over here. Egypt is right here, and North Africa is up here, and Greece is right over here. Italy, and of course Italy was like a boot that stretched right across to Africa. You understand? Well, these people have interacted down through centuries. Just like many of the people in North Africa are mulattoes, like mixed, the same people went from Africa to Europe and mixed over there too. So many of the people that we have been made to believe were white people were mulattoes, mixed people, sometimes just black. Just like some of the people in North Africa were white. There were a few of those scholars over because they were mixing. But for some reason, there were less mixture in Africa than it was, let me get it right now. They were darker in Africa than they were in Europe, because there were more people over there that were white and lesser people, intermixing over on that side. But many of the Italians were people of color, so we're going to talk about
now, I've heard a lot of historians say that it's all due to the sun. It's all because of the sun. How Caucasians actually started off in the Caucasus Mountains.
Right.
That's how they get the name Caucasians, because they come from the Caucasus Mountains, where there was very little to no sunlight.
Right.
So the lower you were deep in the south, the more the pigment of your skin changed, due to the closer you were to the sun.
Right. That's the old story that historians have proved to be a lie.
Okay.
That's not. That's part of the truth. They did find the people that were called Caucasian in the Caucasus Mountain area, but their ethnicity or the way they appeared did have very little to do with what they call natural selection, which would be the sun, because they told that for many years. But they have proven things like this. We've had people to live white people live in the southern part of the world for thousands of years. Every baby is born is white, just like the mom and dad, same features. But in time, he turns darker because of the pigmentation in the sun, providing his body has enough melanin to do that. But they all originated in the south, but the lighter ones moved out of the south because they did have problems with the pigmentation and wound up there at Caucasus Mountain. But it's proven that that was not the truth.
Okay.
The location is where they found a lot of them, but they had migrated there from out of Africa. Caucasus Mountain is up beyond the Black Sea, right above what Greece. And if you can picture Greece, like we was talking about the Mediterranean Sea, Greece is up here, Rome is up here, Caucasus Mountain right over there, and all the people born back here where it was hot. But they migrated, and as they migrated, the lighter ones found more comfort in those areas, and they settled and inbred. And as they inbred, they became lighter and lighter and lighter. Okay?
All right.
But I was taught the same thing. That's where research is important. Okay, so we have how many minutes in this segment?
11.
Huh? We have 3. So we want to talk about Black Greeks. It says here, I want to get some reference. You want to study J.A. Rogers in Sex and Race, Parker, D.I.O.P., Dipio, and Du Bois. These are one of the Afrocentric scholars that taught and did research, so we would know that all of the Greeks were not what we would call today Caucasians or white people, because they didn't have a law against interracial marriage. And wherever they didn't have that, you had a mixed blood of people, because people did not select their mates according to what they looked like, according to what they felt about one another. So even Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle could very well have been from biracial parents. It was just up into the last 1,000 years that efforts were put forward to inbreed the lighter ones and keep inbreeding and try to get accepted by the northern Europeans. See, the Mediterranean people, I wish that we had time. Let's see, I might have time to see if I can find some here. It says, according to the Olympian creation story, the earliest group to appear in that part of the world, they had a name called L-I-B-Y-C-O and T-H-R-A-C-I-A-N-S. These were proto-Saharan. They came from the Sahara area of Africa. That's the we're talking about in Greek, in Greece. These were original Africans. Some, they have these different names that can throw you off on research. They have T-R-A-C-I-A-N-E-S. Some Tricanians were descendants of Cush. Cush was one of the sons of Ham that I mentioned later. This is how they did the research. And those were people, and we have mentioned here Ramses II. We have this king during the time of Ramses II, when he conquered Asia and Europe. They got a reference, DIOP, 1991, Winters, 1983, and etc. It says many of the Greek myths are in reality historical texts which shows the ancient lifestyle of the pre-Aryans. The Aryans were people that called themselves white in Europe, the Aryans. They moved from the Caucasus Mountains up north, and before them we had the darker people there. We got to close out here.
All right.
And I hope we've said enough to encourage research and sincere research. So someday we will perhaps be judged by the contents of our character rather than the color of our skin. Who said that?
Dr. Martin Luther King.
Dr. Martin Luther King, and his birthday is being celebrated next week. Is that right?
That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, doke.